If Jesus really wanted to help Lazarus, if he really wanted to save him, he wouldn't have hung around wherever he was at for 2 more days when he learned that Lazarus was deathly ill. I mean, that's such a peculiar phrase in the scriptures. That Jesus loved Martha and Mary and Lazarus, so when he heard his friend was sick, he stayed where he was for 2 more days. It doesn't make sense. So if Jesus really wanted to help Lazarus, if he really wanted to heal him, he would have moved immediately. Which tells us that what Jesus does for Lazarus is not really for Lazarus. That he goes there knowing that he is not going to save him from dying, but rather is going to resuscitate him, to breathe the life back into his body, not for Lazarus, who will die again, but rather for all of the people who are gathered there. When Jesus prays at the front of the tomb, he prays to his Father, I thank you for hearing me. I say these things, I do these things, not for me, not for Lazarus, but for the people who are here and who are going to believe because of this. That Jesus, in a sense, enters into this friendship with Martha and Mary and Lazarus. And he trusts them and they trust him. And so together, they are going to now demonstrate that the resurrection is possible. That death does not create an end, but rather creates a new beginning. And that Jesus' power over death will begin to be seen. So Lazarus, while he benefits in some sense by coming back to life, it isn't like Jesus' resurrection in some weeks yet to come. It's a resurrection, more like a resuscitation rather. Lazarus is back to life, he's breathing again, but he will die. And he will be buried again. And they will go through the mourning all over again. The gift of God, the power of God's love, is not meant for Lazarus, but it's meant for others. Jesus' own passion and death, it's not meant for himself. He doesn't die, he doesn't lay down his life for himself, but rather he lays it down for others. We remember those words where Jesus says, unless the grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains a single grain. But if it dies, it will yield a rich harvest. The grain dies. And as it does, a new growth comes up, and many grains and much fruit is born out of that. But interestingly enough, it's not for the grain. The fruit is going to be picked by someone else. The new grains are going to be plucked by someone else. The fruit is going to be eaten by someone else, not by the one who died. So the one who dies truly loses everything. But it's out of love. Jesus allowed himself to lose his friend, allowed Mary and Martha to lose their brother, allowed Lazarus to lose his life, lost everything. Why? For themselves? No. For all of those who were going to come to believe. That's heroic love. When I was teaching full-time and in charge of musicals and plays at school, the last musical that we performed was based on the 16th century, 17th century poet Cyrano de Bergerac. And it's kind of a historical fiction on this fellow who is known to have a large nose and thought himself to be very ugly. So much so that in his ugliness he said, I, in my ugliness, could not even attract an ugly woman to be with me. And so he was kind of faced with this life of loneliness. But he had a tongue of gold. He could write poetry and weave words that mystified and captivated. And the story, the play that unfolds, is the story about Cyrano and this love of his, Roxanne. And you may have seen Steve Martin's version of the story of Cyrano in the movie titled Roxanne, a newer version of the same story. And Cyrano longs to be with Roxanne, but she overlooks him. And then this young and handsome Christian de Neuvillette comes into town, and Roxanne is captivated by his swagger, and is captivated by him. And she wants to have a relationship with him. Unfortunately, he's an idiot. And he can't put two words together to make sense if he tried. And so in order to woo the heart of this lovely maiden, Christian enlists the help of Cyrano. You be my words. You write my poetry. You write my letters to Roxanne. You be the words that are whispering in my ear as I speak to her on her balcony. And Cyrano does so because it's a way for him to express his own love to Roxanne through Christian. Well, Christian and Roxanne fall madly in love with one another. They are married, and Christian goes off to the war, and he's killed. And in that death, Roxanne mourns for him greatly, and she tells Cyrano, oh, I loved him, but what I loved most about him was the beauty of his words. That he spoke to me as no other man could ever speak to me, and it touched my heart, and I fell in love with him. And in that moment, Cyrano, who was about to tell her that he had written the letters and written the poetry, he realizes he cannot. He cannot tell her that he was Cyrano's muse, or he was Christian's muse, because it would take away her love of her husband. It would destroy a little something. He freely gave his words to Christian to use, and he cannot take them back now and claim them as his own. And so he lets that die within him, so that the love that the two of them had would go on forever. And there is poetic tragedy and romance. It is the love that sacrifices, that Cyrano is willing to be a hero, to sacrifice his love. It makes no business sense at all. If you look at love from a business perspective, it makes no sense. To pay out, to give, and to get nothing in return, to not taste the fruit of my own labor, doesn't make sense. But love is not a business arrangement. Love does not make business sense. And true love, heroic love, makes even less sense. Because true love does what Jesus does today, what Lazarus does. True love sacrifices. True love dies to the self so that the goods may be reaped by others. And that is what a hero does. If you look at God's love, passion, the passion that we will be celebrating in the weeks to come, the passion is love, but it is suffering. That love and suffering are often woven together because of the two kinds of love that there are. There is the need to be loved, and there is the need to give love. In any relationship, whether we are friends or lovers or spouses, in any relationship, when those get cockeyed, the whole relationship is thrown off. When we expect the other to satisfy our needs, the relationship cannot work. It is not real love. The love that we are called to is the gift love. What can I do for you that's going to bear fruit, that you will eat the fruit, not I? What can I die to so that you will reap the harvest and grow in your goodness? That love always has to come first. And in any relationship that's worth its salt, we don't have to fear then about not being loved, because the other will enact gift love as well and give us what our hearts deeply desire. But we cannot demand it. We cannot look for the fruit to be reaped for ourselves. Rather, we are called to imitate Christ's heroic love, The love that dies, the love that says, I will not get to taste the fruit that I plant, the seed that I plant. That's for someone else. Hopefully someone will feed me, but my job is to feed the other. And that's why I think what inspires. And I think that's why the human heart naturally yearns and loves those kind of stories and those kind of tales when we see them in life. I think also to the great epic tale of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. And it ends with the hero, Frodo the Hobbit, who has just saved Middle-earth from the evil spirit. And he says to his best friend, I've saved Middle-earth, but not for me. Now I have to get on the ship and depart these lands, because I saved it for you. You get married. You raise up the family. You enjoy the fruit of these labors. I can't do that. It's not for me. It's for someone else. In that great gift of love, what Frodo demonstrates, what Cyrano demonstrates, what Jesus himself demonstrates in his death, he demonstrates that the human heart wants more than what this world has to offer. That the human heart yearns for something beyond the fruit of our own labors. And when we recognize that, when we yearn for that, we have found what we are looking for. Not this life, not the blessings of this life, but the blessings of something beyond this life. And I think, to be honest, that's what inspires my own vocation in the priesthood. That it's really not about building up my own life. And in every assignment that I've been in, you work hard, you do what you can, and then you move on. And you don't get to keep any of it for yourself, but you leave it all behind for someone else. It's the love of parents for their children, who build up a life not for themselves, but for those that they will leave behind, those who will follow after them. It's the love that is true sacrifice, true pouring out, true emptying, so that someone else may eat of its fruit. It's what chastity is about, that I will sacrifice myself for the other. It's what true charity is about. It's what true love, God's love, is about, a heroic love. And you and I are called to that heroic love. We desire it, whether we know it or not. We desire that kind of love. The love that sacrifices itself for the other. The love that says, I will plant the seed for you, knowing that I may never taste its fruit, but that you will be nourished by it. It's the example that we are given by Jesus. And as he raises Lazarus from the dead, yes, he gives Lazarus back his earthly life. And that's a fruit I'm sure Lazarus was appreciative of. But it wasn't the best fruit. The best fruit was the fruit of faith that everyone else consumed that day. And their faith in the resurrection, their faith in eternal life, all of a sudden, they yearned for something more. As we complete our Lenten journey in these final weeks, we ask God to give us the hunger for something more. To help us yearn for fruit that we will not plant with our own hands, and that we will give love heroically, as did Jesus, and all of those other heroes that we encounter along the way of our lives.